So over here at the Art of Fatherhood, we are big fans of being dads. It's a big part of our lives, most important part of our lives for sure. But what happens to the rest of us? What happens to all the things we were doing before we were a dad? And I think that's a big factor for a lot of people who are thinking about being parents, as well as people who are maybe going through midlife crises. We're going to talk about it today.
Hi, welcome back to the Art of Fatherhood. I'm Brian LaFauci.
And I'm Patrick Marino.
And today we're going to talk about identity. Can I read something to you?
Do whatever you want.
All right.
Within reason.
You stop touching. Did you just
safe word. He needs a safe word.
Did you just touch my ass? Shannon, did you touch my ass? What was that movie? Where?
My safe word is blueberry pancakes.
Blueberry pancakes. Stick with us till the end of the video. We're actually going to talk about fatherhood and identity and keeping your identity. So I just was looking at like this thread on Reddit. You ever done Reddit? And
after you spent your time on our conspiracy?
Yep. And this guy says, anyone else feel like they're losing their identity? Hello, daddies, which I already think you're a fucking weirdo, but hello, daddies. The title pretty much explains it. I'm the father of a 9-month-old. I'm doing a good job keeping up with chores around the house, helping with diaper change, feedings, meals, naps, blah, 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 blah. By the time the kiddos asleep, I have no more energy for me, and I feel guilty that I'm letting my career hobbies and friends slip. And I think that's great. Not great that he feels guilty about it, but it's a good topic because we talk so frequently about the other end of the coin. We talk about the part of this where, you know, we're focusing on being the dad, and it's almost sometimes I feel like we're talking to the person who might feel like they need a little guidance or push in that area. And this is the other side to that coin, because everything in life is balance. And how frequently do we feel like this and feel like part of our identity starts to maybe get lost a little bit, and eventually that kid's going to leave, and we're like trying to reform our identity.
Or it's, in I think both of our cases, I don't know how long you were single after your first marriage, but it was a jarring part of a divorce.
Yeah.
Is the idea that, you know, one moment you are spending every moment with a young person, you know, taking care of them, seeing them every day when they wake up, seeing them every day go to bed, and all of a sudden, whatever your agreement is, in my case, it's week to week. You now have a whole week where you don't see him, and your whole identity is interrupted, right? So, what you said is perfect.
I think, you know, I took a little bit the other end of this. Well, I remember distinctly the first Christmas right after I don't think my divorce might not have been finalized, but we were, you know, it was finalized, just not, you know. And the first Christmas where my kids were going to be with their mom on Christmas Eve, and then they were going to come to my house around noon Christmas Day and spend the rest of the time there. And so I'm a grown adult, right? And I'm like, what the fuck am I going to do Christmas morning? Like, I went to the gym. This is depressing. Okay?
Yeah.
Get out your hankies. I went to the gym Christmas morning. There was an Anytime Fitness that I had a membership to, and I went there at like 7:30 in the morning. I worked out for like 20 minutes. And it was so depressing. I thought it was going to be the opposite. It was so depressing. Yeah. I was like, I gotta fucking get out of here. I gotta go. Like, I think I'm gonna start drinking instead.
I had a moment like that. I went to it was Thanksgiving or was it Easter? Must have been Easter based on the timing. If I time it right, I went golfing on Easter morning.
I remember seeing a pit.
Yeah. So, and I was. It's probably easier than going to the gym because it's like almost like at the gym, there's no like, I don't know, like you could do 20 minutes and just be like, I'm not going to do the rest of it. Whereas if you're in the 8th hole, it's like I have to do the 9th hole. Otherwise it's on the way home. You know what I mean? You don't just be like, oh, I'm out of here.
Right.
It's probably a little bit easier than what you did. But similar thing, just trying to take my mind off it.
But now think about this. I think that speaks really well to the fact of why did that feel? Why did that feel bad? And I do think part of it is that too much of my identity was wrapped up in this thing of fatherhood that it wasn't balanced. Like I could still be and that's really what led to me writing my book. Believe it or not, was one I
Get it
wanted.
on Amazon right now, Amazon.com.
I appreciate
Art of
that.
Fatherhood, paint by numbers.
There you go. But one was, okay, I saw like some of the struggles of dealing with the court system, and I was like, well, this is bullshit, right? And I needed something cathartic to kind of talk through the importance of dads. But the other was when I wasn't with my kids, I was doing something that connected me to them.
Right.
And think about that. It was all identity. Like that's all just, okay, in my mind, all right, I'm not with you today, but I'm writing a book about being a dad, and I felt connected to them through that. And and then we wrote the song and got the song produced and did like all of that shit. Yes, it had a purpose, but part of it was this identity piece of wanting to find a way when I wasn't with them to feel connected with them and to feed that part of my identity that had grown to be clearly most of my identity, right? And I think a lot of dads are in that. I didn't realize the New York Times actually did an article on this in 2020.
Oh, geez, we got a little bit of research going on as well.
Yeah, and it was called "Becoming a Dad Meant Losing My Edge," and it was worth it.
Well, we both believe that that becoming a father is a good thing, right? You
of course,
and I both believe that it's made us better people.
Yes,
these are things that we believe. Not everybody shares that thing. Right?
No,
there's a whole segment of the people who just. A lot of it is it prevents you from wanting to be a parent at first because you're like, oh, what happens to my life? What happens to me? That I'm a lot of it's professional development, right? It's like, okay, well, I'm focused on my professional development here, and like I don't have time to now change that, right? And so there is that fear of becoming a father or becoming a parent, but then there is the unknown where. Okay, well now what? Now
right.
who am I now?
Yeah.
Like, am I still that same person before? And you and I are arguing today for balance and how important that is, and I think that's true. But I think that it's different. This is in my life. So I'm a privileged person. Like I'm not rich or anything like that, but privileged. Relatively. Fine.
Right.
Like I've gone through a whole bunch of struggle. I've never been in the war. I've never lost like a really, really significant loved one where it was like a big surprise. There's a whole bunch of things I'm very, very thankful for and very grateful for. So in my life, the one life-changing thing, it wasn't getting married. It wasn't getting divorced. It was having a kid.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's like, because I know a lot of people who've never been divorced. Right. And so they're like, oh, divorce is very similar to a breakup. It might be a little bit worse if you've got like property and shit like that, but like for the most part, it's just like any other breakup.
Yeah.
But having a kid is like a whole that's.
Well, that's the delineator in a divorce too.
It makes divorce way more difficult too.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, like
you don't
that's
got
the
kids,
one.
you can pop through wives like Tic Tacs.
Yeah. That's the identity. The identity. Your identity is changed forever when you become a parent. It's just a whole different thing. For sure.
Right.
So and now you are somebody different for sure.
Right. And so how do we, we kind of get into this. How do we as dads balance the feeling of being a father, making it a priority, doing that, but yet still maintaining who we are without that feeling of guilt? And all of us as dads lie somewhere on this spectrum.
Yeah, for sure.
That spectrum has two extreme ends. Extreme end number one is the guy who does nothing but live, breathe, sleep their kid. The video we did on living vicariously through your kids.
I was thinking about that video too.
They're the extreme of that, right?
Tiger Woods' father.
Yeah, right.
Or somebody like that.
Yep. And so that's one end of the spectrum. We don't think that end is very healthy. The other end of the spectrum, equally unhealthy. The dad whose kid does not know who his dad is, right? Equally unhealthy.
You abandon it, or you're just a professional athlete.
Yep.
You just have sex with a bunch of chicks all the time.
Yep. And then there's that then there's a standard deviation bell curve, okay? And most dads fit somewhere in the middle on that bell curve. But there's a good percentage of us who are trending a little bit towards losing a bit of our own identity because of it. And I think even those of us working hard at, maintaining balance, those of us that think balance is important, it is very easy to have so much of your identity tied up in this thing.
It's like if you look at like old, like, I mean, my father was I think for our time is probably kind of typical, but like my father was super dad. I mean, like he was super heavily involved in being a dad, but like you watch like bad TV shows or if you read like historical records or whatever it is, you see like a lot of more stern father figures where the mother is the more of the parent, right? And the father's kind of working and comes home and, isn't as involved in the actual parenting. So I think today we're probably more typical of what's being, at least the media and people are telling you to do is be a more involved father today.
Yeah, the balance.
And so we're probably dealing with the identity loss more than they might have in the past where, people were living harder lives or focused on survival, you know what I mean? Whereas we're living in our cushy worlds where we can pretty much do whatever we want. So we're probably struggling with the balance more than they did in the past.
Absolutely.
Probably wasn't an issue before.
Yeah. Everything swings like a pendulum. And right now, in a positive way, I think, the world as a whole has swung the pendulum slightly away from moms. We all agree with this. This is pretty reasonable. Like, mom raises the kids, dad goes to work. We know that's not the case anymore. We know that both that role identity, role identity in the house has shifted,
right,
where it is not clearly defined anymore, which is good and bad to that too. But we see that there is a strong benefit, and we bring up the stats to be really boring about this conversation. Strong benefit in fathers being involved because when they're not, prison recidivism rates and drug use among kids and like all and masculinity, which is
depression.
Well, all those things correlate. So we now know, okay, there needs to be a a male and female or masculine, feminine role model in the house, and we can, we can go into that conversation. But really, we're talking, that role model needs to be there. So now there's these dads that are more involved. They're doing all this stuff. It's great. We love it. We're happy about it. But the consequence of the pendulum swinging is some of this other stuff where we have individuals that are losing their identity a little bit out there.
Everyone's losing their identity to a certain extent.
Yes.
But I think that one way to look at it in terms of how to, first of all, I think we're talking about balance. So we are basically saying that you want to maintain who you were.
Yep.
And who you were is always going to change anyway. Like you're going to evolve whether you have a kid or not. You're going to be a little different every year, right? Because you grow, you learn, you make mistakes, so you mature to a certain extent. I think that for us, it's you want to maintain who you were, and I think you have a responsibility to maintain who you were to your kid, right? Because, I mean, think about. It's always interesting to hear your kid talk about who you are.
Yeah.
To somebody else.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
We're like this fucking inanimate object, really.
Right, exactly. It's like, and I think that it's more complicated today than it probably was.
What do you do again?
50 years ago. 50 years ago, it was probably wicked complicated for the kid. The kid was just like, probably not complicated, where the kid was just like, oh, my dad does this and that's it. My mom takes care of me, cleans the house, and that's it. Now it's a little bit more complicated. But like, I think it's important for your kids to know that you are a well-rounded person because you are their model for what a person is supposed to be.
Right.
So if you are not well-rounded, even in a way that they can't see, because some people are also like a different person outside of the house than they are in the house. And when the kid finds out about that, that can be a struggle. Mm-hmm. Whereas if we can just kind of demonstrate to our kid, like, hey, we're a well-rounded person. Like I have these hopes and fears, and I have these, my friends, here are my friends, right? And I've known this person for 40 years, right? And here's this person that I went to school with, and here's these people I work with. And here I'm into these things, right? When we're not together, I do, I have a drink, or I, have a cigar, or I go golfing, or I play a sport. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's important for our kids who are just learning how to become a person, that they see the varieties of people. And the way they do that is by you having your identity that's not just linked to them. And plus, I think it helps them not be so selfish.
Yeah.
Because they understand that it's not just about them, right? That you also have your own life too.
And there are things that our kids will do that make it clearly evident that they view us as strictly existing for their benefit. There's things they'll say like, hey, I left my blah, blah, blah. Can you swing it by? Just as, as if I was, what was I doing at that moment? I was sitting on the couch, looking at my phone, just waiting for their next, request.
Dad, I'm trying to get my V-Bucks on Fortnite in my account. Goodness. Where are you?
What are you doing?
Can't do it right now, bro.
I love that one. Where are you right now? I'm like, fuck. Where am I right now? Far away. I'm so far away that you can get me with a spaceship. But yeah, I mean, so they clearly see it that way, and we clearly create that for them, and we're kind of living in that world. And one of the things that I would encourage our listeners to do, and I do this consciously with my kids, is there will be times where I will, and I don't want to say this I don't want to say it's like in a mean way, but there'll be times where I could do something that would potentially benefit them, and I do something consciously that is more like, hey, I got this planned, and yeah, I could break from it, but I'm not gonna.
Right.
Because
there's probably a point where you felt bad about making that decision.
I always feel guilty about it. No, there's never not a period of where I'm just okay with it.
Yep.
But it's these conscious moments of identifying to them, hey, I'm a person too. And it's more of getting them to see, helping to get our identity back. A way to do that is make conscious decisions where they see their impact and its impact on their actions and its impact on you.
Right.
Because it's a backwards way of doing it, but it's also a reminder to you that you're a person, and you're your own person, and you have these things, and you're more than just. I do that a lot of times with money with them, where frequently, young kids will be in situations where they want to earn money for something. Where I'm in a position right now where of the 5 kids, every one of them has a job, so they all have a way to, some of them are older and they should have a job, but even the younger ones, they have a job. But they'll frequently say stuff to me like, hey, I need extra money for this or that. Can I do something, right? Or can I do this or that? And I'll use those opportunities to take them down the rabbit hole, and they'll listen because they have a want and need there. So like it's like you got them because they're like, all right, you need something from me. So I'm going to take advantage of this moment, and I'm going to let you see me more as a person. And in turn, I see myself as more, not just here to meet your every need. Like, it helps me re-identify with me and my role and, those kind of things. And I'll walk them through how me paying them for something means that I have to work more. That it doesn't just magically come, even if it's $20, $30, I have to go re-earn that, right? So I'd earned it, you need it, I'm going to let you do something that maybe I needed done, maybe I didn't, and now I got to go re-earn it. And I'll walk them through that process of it not just being, because they don't see that end of it. It's like they see you as like big corp, right?
Right,
like,
for sure.
Big corp and if I do something for you, you can pay me and you should thank me. No. It doesn't work that way.
Well, I think there's a lot of kids out there who are being, every kid is, except for the kids who are working, are being 100% financially floated by their parents.
Yeah, of course.
Right? So if they're doing something like, some of these elite sports programs that cost thousands and thousands of dollars a year where there's travel and all that stuff, I think that there's a lot of parents who completely sacrifice every part of their lives for that kind of lifestyle. And maybe that's a mistake. I definitely think it's a mistake. I think it's a mistake to just say, okay, well, this is what my kid wants, so I'm just freaking drop everything and put everything into that kid.
Right.
Because then they don't necessarily, I mean, there's stories of both sides, and we talk about this all the time. There's Tiger Woods, whose dad walks up, who's like, I wouldn't be anywhere without my dad. We have the best relationship in the world, and this is the best thing ever. And then there's a million examples of the parent pushing the kid away. The kid never becomes anything in the sport because the kid has nothing in it. You know what I mean? The kid has nothing besides, the sports may be a bad example in some cases, but the kid isn't invested when you're just spending all the money, and they don't see the sacrifice that you're making to your life. Whereas if you're just like, hey, we can't swing it partially because your mom and I are going away and we're not just spending all of our money on your baseball program.
Right.
I mean, we're still going to go away every year. You know what I mean? We're just not going to do that. You know what I mean? Like it's not, and it sounds a little bit selfish, but I think that there's a lesson in that. Not necessarily that you're teaching the kid that lesson, but the kid is not the end all be all of everything. You know what I mean? Like you are still you. It's still important that you get away with your wife or by yourself. Right. Right. And it's not just, hey, like, okay, we're not gonna be able to do that tournament this year. We still have it. And we're going to prioritize all these other things. Yeah. You know what I mean? That I think that there's the financial is a good way of looking at it. It's like your financial identity, like you spend some money on you. I think the two things we talk a lot about as a solution to many of the problems that we talk about on our here and on our Blunt Force business channel, it comes back to calendaring. Right. And I think calendaring is important in this aspect. And there are two things. One that I learned extensively with my wife is that, and you start to, my kids are getting older now, so I start to see, I really can feel like what my parents and your parents are experiencing right now, which is at the end of the day, you have each other. Right. Not them. Yep. Like they're gone. Mm-hmm. They'll start their own family. They're gone. They're not going to, right? So that person you're hanging out with, right, you need to continue to make sure that gets forth, and that's a piece of identity that can get lost. Yeah. Because everything's about the kid. So there needs to be time blocked on that calendar. I don't care if it's once a month or whatever, where you and your spouse or your significant other, you and your friends. Well, I'm going to get to that too. Okay. Right. Are out. Yeah. And it's about you, and it's not about the kid. Yeah. And then the other piece to your point right there is there needs to be that time there also for you and your friends. And maybe that's another one time a month or whatever. And then there needs to be the time for you and you. Yeah. And maybe that's more like once or twice a week, where you're blocking out a couple hours for you and you to do the things you like, not lose, because it can be done. It's like, it's all about effective scheduling. But those things can be done. A refocus on you and your friends, you and your spouse, and blocking them in appropriate time intervals and committing to them, because they are the thing that make you a well-rounded dad. You talk about the when you grow up and, okay, now your kids are older and now they're out of the house and now it's just you and your spouse, or it's just you. That's one way of looking at it. Another way of looking at it is what's the divorce rate right now? Right. It's super high. Yeah. Right. So it's like the chance, it's higher than not, right? You're more likely to get divorced than you are to stay together. Yeah. By even a small percentage. So maybe factor that in, right? So it's like, you don't want to lose your identity completely, because in an instant you could be on your own again. you could. Right? And it's freaking, for those of you who haven't been through it, and we have been, it was jarring for me. Oh, it's a jarring thing going from single person to married with kids to then single person again with a complicated child situation, right? So that's why it's so important, because all these things you can't control. Some of these things are uncontrollable. Like divorce is controllable to a certain extent, but sometimes you just evolve and grow, and she evolves and grows, and there's nothing you can do about that, right? So you end up apart. So you got to stay committed to you. And we talk about it from a business ownership perspective too. It's like, you can't just be, hustle culture is a scam. You have to develop yourself, because you've only got one you, and once that's gone, then you're dead, right? So it's like, you have to make sure that you're focused on you and don't lose your identity. I think that's I think it's so important.
Absolutely. Get it on the calendar.
And get it
Get
on the
you
calendar.
on the calendar. And just to wrap up that point too, I think part of the reason why one of the factors in divorce rate being so high is that kids get involved and we don't put our relationship with our spouse on the calendar.
Right.
And we both just care about being a parent, not about being a spouse.
Yep.
Right. And so this sort of action can be a game changer just for saving relationships and making them last.
Yeah.
Taking the time together. So.
Yeah. So don't. What's the takeaway here? Don't lose yourself.
Don't double negative.
Don't not do not that thing. Be yourself. Continue. I think it's important to. It's really hard just as you get older and have kids in particular, get in the families. Life changes, careers change, all that stuff. It's really important to stay in touch with people physically.
Yep.
I've got a friends group, and actually the friends group that developed a little bit later in life, but somehow it's freaking still churning because I think everybody makes their effort.
Yeah.
Especially there's a couple key people in particular that really make the effort. And so it's just so important. It's been really important, especially now that I'm divorced.
Yeah.
Even though they're all married, and that freaking sucks when everybody is married. that sucks.
You don't get invited
yeah,
to the...
well, no, it's not that you don't get invited. It's more just I'm on my own, and they're just
Yeah.
I got the kids all the time, not just half the time like you do.
Awesome.
But I think it's an effort, right? We always talk about there being purpose and intention, right?
Yes.
So it's got to be intentional. If you're afraid, not just if you're afraid, but this is going to happen. You're going to lose your identity when you have a kid.
Yeah.
You don't have to lose all of it, right? You have to be intentional about it.
And I'll my 2 cents on it is 1, balance and scheduling. Balance and scheduling. And if your schedule looks balanced, it'll minimize you feeling like you've lost yourself. Awesome. I'm Brian LaFauci.
Patrick Marino.
Till next time.
Thank you.